So I'm gonna go probably just like a little, these are eighths of an inch. I'm gonna go an eighth of an inch in. When you get really tiny ones like this, that measurement really, really matters. If you're working on a bigger one, it's not as important, but I would strongly suggest you make sure your edges are straight, okay? If your edges aren't straight, they will do something like this, right? And then that's a craftsmanship demerit. So what I'm gonna do is, this is why I like these so much, because they have that eighth of an inch. I'm just gonna move it right here, an eighth of an inch away from the actual measured edge. And then I'm gonna put this there as well. Actually, I'll do 2/8 or a quarter, because I need to account for both sides. And then I'll put this here on the interior. And then I'm gonna note to myself, you can use a pencil to do this, but make sure you erase it, where that edge is. Please don't use a pen to do this, because then we'll end up with a bunch of not particularly helpful marks all over the board. Right about there. And then I'm gonna line that. And I'm gonna do the same thing here. I'm gonna have to estimate that and see if it's straight. So what I'm gonna do is, I know for sure this is straight, so I'm gonna cut this one first, then I'm gonna cut that one after verifying that it's straight. I'm gonna use a scissor for this because it's not big. So your scissors are gonna give you a little bit of variation in the cut because they're not quite as straight as a rotary cutter, but let's make sure that's straight before we cut that. Because once that's cut, we're there. Period, end of story. This is 2 inches. This is 2 1/4. This is 2 inches. It's off by like a 1/16 of an inch. If that bothers you, fix it. It would bother me if I were making an actual book, not a demo book, right? So I won't fault you if that does bother you, but we're gonna just go for it for the sake of time. Okay. So this will fit on the interior here. What's one thing I'm doing wrong here? If I were gonna just go ahead and glue this now. Where's your ribbon?
You got it attached to your
I don't
book.
have my ribbon.
And what side of the paper is it? Or
This
is it
is the smooth side, not the
Okay.
textured side.
Yeah.
Right. In this case, what you're talking about is good. It sounded like it wasn't, but it is.
Okay.
In this case, you can do either side because again, it's so small. You're not worried so much about it adhering to already adhered paper. But the specific thing I wanted to point out to you is this is the side that has my drawn edge on it, right? So I need to either erase that if this is a side I plan to use, or flip it if this is the side I plan to use. I like the texture, so I'm gonna do it texture up. Another thing that's happening is what Jeff said. This little dude's not part of the book yet, right? It's great if I have a cover, but if I don't have any pages, it's not a book, right? So the first thing you would do in this situation is put your ribbon down, then put your page down, then put your end page down, okay? My end page is a little bit smaller than my actual page, so I'm gonna trim off that edge. Can everybody see what I mean by that? Right? Okay, so I'm gonna trim off that edge. I'll trim it off right here. You need about half of the width of your cover to get a really good grip. You wanna make sure that this cut is even as well, because it will show depending on your interior paper, okay? I'm so glad I have this. I was making that with Val Thomas, and she was like, "Why do you keep making mistakes?" And I said, "Because they're helpful. Then people can see what mistakes look like." Okay. So I'm going to plop this in here in this order: ribbon, this, and then the interior, right? Does that order make sense to everybody? So the way to do the ribbon is deceptively simple. The first thing you want to do is determine which side of your interior paper is the glue side, right? For me, it's this side because I'm going to be closing it like this, right? It's going to change on each side. So it might be a different side on your end, especially if you have an uneven number of folds, okay? Or you'll see when it happens. I don't want to spend too much time on that. So,
I'm obsessed over that point before I put the glue down.
yeah. It happens. Another thing that you can
It's like
obsess about.
There's no going back from it.
There's not. It's a commitment. Another thing you want to think about before you glue is where your ribbon will be. So I'm going to aim more or less for the center. If you want to stress about it and measure it out, that's perfectly fine. That's better craftsmanship. It's especially going to be better craftsmanship if you're off by that much, right? If you're not great at immediately eyeballing the center, you might want to measure. You can put it at the top. You could put in 2 closures if you wanted to. You could put in a closure here, and for the sake of illustration, a closure here. Whatever it is that you want to do, if you want it to wrap up like a little present. You can also do a loop on one edge if you wanted to do that. If you do that, don't tie a knot. A knot is not going to adhere using this process, okay? If you're going to put a hole through it, right? So Jeff and I talked about this. He's thinking about putting a hole through the center and then tying the kind of closure on the outside or the interior and wrapping it around. Depends on which one you want to do, right? If you do that, this is the time to cut that hole, right? Is it clear on that? Okay. I'm not going to demo that one, so I want to make sure it makes sense.
You can only fix that then.
Okay. I will.
We're way past that.
Oh, well, I'll take a look at it. It might be fine, actually. So what you're going to do is move your string, put everything on, again, this paper. Please do not glue on these nice little dudes. And you'll do again that half, and then half. I'm going to try to be kind of careful. You don't need this gluing to be the best gluing in the universe, but if you do see a little excess glue, wipe it off with your fingers. The reason you don't need this to be the best is we're about to do 3 more gluing sessions, right? The other thing that you'll glue is the page that's going to face this and attach into it. Technically, this is also an end page, right? So this is why we have it on a little piece of wax paper. Then you'll lay down your ribbon more or less in the middle. Let's say right about there. Lay that down. Then you'll attach this edge. You don't want to attach this edge so that the corner is all the way at the end, right? And why? Why not? Why don't we want to go right to this edge?
You want overlap on both sides.
Everything's
You want the
gonna be
cover to
off.
cover everything.
Right,
Yeah.
exactly. And on top of that, right, the cover exists to protect the pages. If you're all the way up to the edge, what's it really protecting, right? Then you'll push this down. I would suggest you hold this for about 15 seconds so that you can keep handling it. We're going to move on because we don't have all the time in the world. Then I'm going to take this I've already decided this is my glue side. If you have memory issues, you might want to write that, just like G on whatever side is the glue side. A really important thing about adhesive book bindings is that you glue on both sides of whatever is getting adhesed together. Okay. So, in this case, I'll be gluing on my smooth side. And in this case, you really do want to glue every single part of it. Okay. So I've got glue on that side, and I need glue on this as well. Again, you don't want to do the most glue in the universe. And if you notice any glue really doing a big outlier, like getting all the way to the top here, you want to wipe that off. Okay. And then you'll just lay this in there. You want to try and put it as far into the crease as you possibly can without causing a bend to the end paper itself. Okay. I'm going to hold this for about 30 seconds, and then you can put something heavy on it, or you can use binder clips and another kind of sheet of paper. And you don't want the binder clips to leave tooth marks. Have you ever heard them called alligator clips before?
I think
It's
so.
one of my favorite phrases for them. But when I say it, people don't know what I'm talking about.
They usually alligator clips, I think they have a serrated edge on them.
Yes, I know what you're talking about, yeah. That makes sense, maybe that's why people are like, what are you talking about? So I've got a few little craftsmanship notes that I kind of want to show you. This would essentially then be the cover, right? And we can assume I'll have a cover on this side as well. A few craftsmanship notes here. I went too far in, right, on this edge. I should have moved it a little bit more that way. On top of that, if you look at my pages themselves, I have too many, and you can tell because they start pushing out. Does that make sense? They start to kind of bow outward. If you get to this point and you realize you have too many pages and it's over the number that I asked for, you can cut some out. Okay. I strongly suggest you hold it together just to see what it looks like, because at this point the glue is tacky enough that I could pull this up if I wanted to, and I have enough pages here that I could re-glue if I needed to, right? If you have exactly the minimum number required, you wouldn't want to come apart, right? So for you, it would be getting it right the first time. But if you have like 15 pages, you could easily cut it out, try it again, pull off the glue. This version of the glue does not have starch in it. That is why it doesn't have starch in it, so that you can make corrections if you need to. Okay. Any questions about any of this?
Is it just the same with the paper cover?
Yes, I'm going to show you the paper cover. It's very much the same. You'll have the same kind of cuts. You'll have the same order. I don't know. Do you want to see me do it with paper? It's the same thing.
I'm all right extrapolating.
So the main thing with paper is, Lucinda brought in a bunch of origami paper, which should be fine. This is Jeff's paper that he also donated. This paper is also fine as far as like the width. This paper is kind of cutting it, right? So nothing thinner than this. Okay, do we all remember how thick this is? So if you brought in any paper from outside, check it against that. I'm gonna double check the origami paper too.
That's kind of thing.
Let me see. Yeah, that's about the same thickness as this. If you're going for a very light color like this you can hear, right, how much lighter these two are, right? So just double check, okay? That's especially true when you're picking your interior. Where did it go to? There it is. When you're picking your interior, right here, this needs to be a thick piece of paper, right? Something like this. The reason for that is, again, in my mistake book, if you make that mistake and you pick a paper that is too thin to cover up that edge, you'll end up with a seam. It's not the worst thing in the world, but it is a craftsmanship thing, so you want to think about it.
Can it be cloth?
It can be cloth. It should be one of the stiffer cloths in that box. So, nothing so thin as this, nothing thinner than this.
And probably something that doesn't fray much
Exactly.
because it's more visible with the edges.
Exactly. And a darker color too. Any other questions? Okay, so
Like construction paper work for the cover?
construction paper will work, yeah. And we have a bunch of cardstock in there too, yeah. To close these, you just push the button. Please make sure you close these before you put them back in there. We don't want to cut anybody.
Your veins are important.
Right, exactly. Keep all your blood
No
in
one
your body. I want to keep you as intact as you were when you came in the room, okay?
It's art.
One other little thing, just because I've noticed it happening, make sure you wipe the edge of these before you close them, okay? You can just wipe them with the regular paper towel, but make sure you wipe off that excess glue. I'm just gonna use my fingers. 'Cause
I'll never be able to open it.
yes, we have one that I'm
Oh,
slowly working on every day.
Yeah.
And you will theoretically be able to open it, but you'll have to stick a blade in there. And I don't want you to
Yeah.
do that.
we're bookbinding, not jar binding.
Exactly, exactly. Bookbinding, not jar binding. I love that. Okay, so what I'm gonna say to you now, we're done with the demo. You can